My son chuckled, watching me struggle to lift my teacup. Careful, Dad. Maybe it's time we look into a home, before you set the house on fire. His girlfriend snorted, not even trying to hide it. I stared at the cup, trembling slightly between my fingers, not from nerves, but from age. These hands built the cradle he slept in. Fixed the roof over his head. Buried his mother. And now they were a punchline. That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after they went to bed. My hands shook, but they were still strong enough to sign. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. They weren't always like this, my hands, I mean. There was a time when they were the strongest part of me. Thick palms, calloused fingers, steady as stone. I made my living with them, shaping wood, setting tile, building cabinets and homes. I remember running my thumb along a fresh piece of oak and knowing, just by touch, if it would warp in the rain. When Marjorie got sick, it was these hands that held her through the worst of it. Wiped her, those hands never failed me. Not once. Forehead. Lifted her frail body from the bed when her legs stopped listening to her. And when we laid her to rest, I stood over her grave with Daniel holding my hand on one side and the pastor holding a Bible on the other. One hand full of life, the other full of death. But I was still strong. I had to be. Daniel was just 10 when she passed. A quiet, sensitive boy who suddenly had to grow up with one parent and too many questions. I remember the way he used to cry into my chest at night, asking why she left us. I never had a good answer. But I always held him until he fell asleep, even if it meant I didn't sleep at all. I promised Marjorie I'd keep him safe. And for a long time, I think I did. We were close, him and me. Every Saturday, we'd fix something together. A leaky faucet. A wobbly chair. I taught him how to use a level, how to check measurements twice. He was bright, and quick with his hands too. We'd finish our projects and then drive out to that little diner on 5th Street, the one with the greasy burgers and bottomless fries. When he started high school, I made a point of eating dinner at the table every night, even if I had jobs running late. He'd tell me about math tests, or his new sneakers, or who he liked at school. I tried to listen. Really listen. It's something Marjorie used to say, listening is love in its simplest form. College was tough. I didn't have a big retirement plan or savings account. Everything went into raising him. I took double shifts. Sold the boat I built with my father. Cashed out a small life insurance policy early, just so he wouldn't have to take out as many loans. I remember sitting in the admissions office, trying not to show how embarrassed I was when I asked about work study. But I was proud. So damn proud. When he walked across that stage in his cap and gown, I swear I could feel Marjorie next to me, squeezing my hand. He looked at me in the crowd, smiled, and mouthed, "Thanks, Dad." That smile could have built a cathedral inside my chest. He moved out after college, got a decent job in marketing. Called me once a week, sometimes more. Still came by for birthdays, Father's Days. He even helped me patch the roof one summer. We worked side by side, and I remember thinking, he turned out all right. Maybe I didn't mess it all up after all. But slowly, almost so slowly I didn't notice, things started shifting. Not right away. But here and there. He stopped calling as often. Said he was busy. The visits became shorter. One Christmas, he brought Alana. She was charming at first, but sharp underneath. I remember her watching me make coffee, then laughing quietly and whispering something in Daniel's ear. He smiled at her, not me. I pretended not to notice. Even then, I told myself I was imagining things. That this was just how life goes. Kids grow up. They pull away. They have their own worries, their own homes. I couldn't expect him to orbit around me forever. But part of me missed him. The version of him who used to leave notes on the fridge that said, "Love you, Dad," or the kid who once stayed up all night to help me rebuild the water heater in December. The one who asked me to teach him how to shave, and then cut his chin trying. I guess we all lose pieces of each other over time. Like erosion. Slow and silent, until one day, the shore is just gone. Still, I didn't worry then. Not really. I figured we'd find our rhythm again. That he'd come around more often. That maybe, one day, he'd bring me a grandchild to spoil and teach how to carve a toy boat or build a birdhouse. I didn't see what was coming. Back then, I still believed blood was enough. That family, no matter how far they drifted, would always drift back. But looking back now, maybe I was just too proud to see the cracks forming beneath my own roof. The first time I noticed something wasn't right, it was so small I almost laughed it off. Daniel had come over with Alana, unannounced, which was fine, more than fine, actually. I was thrilled to see him. I just finished cleaning up the garage, wiping down the old lathe I hadn't used in months, and I remember thinking, maybe he wants to do a little work with me again. But instead of stepping into the garage like he used to, he wrinkled his nose and said, "Still keeping all this junk, Dad? You could make a fortune if you cleared this place out." Junk. That word sat funny with me. Not because it wasn't true, I had held on to too much over the years. Tools I never touched, wood scraps, Marjorie's old flower pots. But it was the way he said it. No warmth. No pause to think if that might hurt. Alana jumped in, too. We could bring in one of those estate people. They'd clear this place out in a weekend. Then she smiled and added, "It's just, this place is so stuck in time. Like a museum for one." They laughed. I forced a chuckle, but my stomach tightened. I told myself not to overreact. Maybe they were just trying to help, maybe they thought I wanted to downsize. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just been labeled a burden. From then on, things started shifting in ways I couldn't explain. Daniel stopped calling me Dad. I don't think I realized it at first, but over time, I noticed, he'd just say, "Hey," or use my name when talking about me to Alana. Like I was someone else entirely. A character in a story he wasn't sure he wanted to keep reading. He started managing more things around the house, too. After he lost his apartment, some lease issue, he said, he and Alana moved in temporarily. I told them it was fine, of course. It's what Marjorie would have wanted. Family first, she always said. But the longer they stayed, the more it felt like I was the one staying in their house. The first thing to go was my recliner, the one Marjorie gave me for our 20th anniversary. "We'll move it to the basement for now," Daniel said, "it's just not really Alana's style." Next was the thermostat. One night, I tried to turn up the heat, my bones ache more in the winter now, but the dial was locked. "We installed a smart system," Alana said brightly. "More efficient. Just text me if you want the temperature changed." I didn't text her. One afternoon, I came back from the pharmacy and found all my tools rearranged. The drawers labeled in bold marker, saws, screws, old stuff. I stood there for a long time, trying to remember where I'd kept Marjorie's garden shears. They were gone. I never found them. I know this sounds petty. Maybe it is petty. But it's not about the recliner or the thermostat. It's about the slow erosion of who I was in this house. My routines. My spaces. My silence. Bit by bit, they chipped away at it. Daniel began talking more like a landlord than a son. "We should really think about selling soon," he'd say. "This neighborhood's at its peak. It'll only go down from here." I'd nod, not agreeing, just deflecting. I thought if I stayed quiet, things would calm down. That he'd see I still had my wits, my value, my place. Then came the comments about my memory. You already told me that, Dad. I think you're forgetting again. You sure you took your meds today? Once or twice, sure, I'd repeat a story. I'm 73, not a machine. But they latched onto every pause, every moment I took to recall something, and built a whole narrative around it. One evening, after dinner, Alana looked at Daniel and said, "You know, if he keeps forgetting stuff, it might not be safe for him to cook." I read about that. It's how a lot of house fires start. I was right there. At the table. A foot away from her. Daniel didn't correct her. Didn't defend me. He just kept chewing and said, "We'll talk about it later." Later. That word stayed with me all night. The balance had shifted. I felt it in every conversation. Every sigh. Every look they shared when I asked a question twice or misplaced my reading glasses. They no longer saw me as the man who raised a son, who buried a wife, who carved every corner of this house with care. They saw an old man. Slipping. Stumbling. In the way. One night, I stayed up late, just sitting in the living room with the lights off. The house sounded different. No Marjorie humming in the kitchen. No Daniel rustling papers for a science project. Just a clock ticking and my own thoughts, loud as thunder. I thought about the time Daniel broke his arm falling off the shed roof. I had told him not to climb it, of course I had, but he wanted to impress the neighbor girl. When I saw him on the ground, crying, cradling that arm, I didn't yell. I just scooped him up, kissed his forehead, and drove like hell to the ER. Now, decades later, he won't even trust me to cook an egg. I started writing things down. Not just to prove I could, though that was part of it, but because I needed to remember who I was before I started believing their version of me. Each morning, I'd jot down what I did. What I remembered. What I heard them say. My hands trembled a little when I wrote. But I made sure each word was legible. Each sentence sharp. Because I could feel something rising in me, not rage, not yet, but a cold kind of awareness. Something was happening behind my back. I just didn't know what. Not yet. It was the barbecue that did it. The one we held every year, right around mid-June, ever since Marjorie passed. I started it as a way to keep Daniel close after she was gone. Food, family, a few beers, something simple to remind us we still had each other. That year, Daniel insisted on organizing it. Said he wanted to take some stress off me. I should have known something was off when he didn't even ask me to help with the grill. That had always been my station, apron stained with smoke, tongs in hand, spatula hanging from my belt loop like a badge of honor. Instead, Daniel had one of his old college friends flipping the burgers while he and Alana worked the crowd like they were hosting a real estate open house. I just stood by the porch, a paper plate in hand, listening to a bunch of conversations that didn't need me. No one asked me how I was. No one mentioned Marjorie. And then it happened. I had just refilled my lemonade. I remember the cup shaking slightly, not too much, just a little ripple on the surface, when I heard Daniel's voice rise above the chatter. He was talking to his friends, standing in a loose circle near the grill, drink in hand. And he still thinks he's sharp, you know? Walks around like he's got the place under control. Last week he left the stove on for an hour. Burned half a pot of beans. The group chuckled. Someone said, "Classic old man move." Then Daniel added, in that smooth, joking tone he uses when he's trying to be clever, "We're just waiting for the day he forgets where he lives. I've got the brochures ready. The Del Mar retirement home has bingo every Thursday." Laughter. Even Alana laughed, loud and full, her head tilting back like it was the funniest thing she'd heard all day. I froze. Right there, in the middle of my own backyard. The cup in my hand trembled harder now, lemonade spilling onto the grass. He saw me. I know he did. Our eyes met for just a second. And then, he looked away. Didn't apologize. Didn't even flinch. I walked back inside the house, plate untouched. I sat at the kitchen table and stared out the window at the people I had once called family, friends. They all laughed with him. Not a single one came after me. Not even to check if I was okay. The silence hurt more than the joke. That night, when the last car had pulled out of the driveway and the yard was scattered with paper plates and plastic cups, Daniel came inside, smiling like nothing had happened. "You all right, old man? You disappeared for a while." "Just tired," I said. "Well, we cleaned up most of it. Alana said she'll help you with dishes in the morning." He gave me a pat on the shoulder and walked off. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying that moment in the backyard. The way they laughed. The way he looked right through me. Like I was just some prop in his life now, the aging father he kept around for nostalgia, but no longer respected. It wasn't just the joke. It was what it revealed. He didn't see me as capable anymore. Or valuable. Or worth protecting. He saw me as a burden. The next day, I overheard Alana on the phone in the hallway. She didn't see me standing by the stairs. "No, it went great. Everyone loves Daniel. And yeah, we talked to that agent. She said we could easily get $650 if we staged the place right. Just gotta clean up some of the old man clutter." Old man clutter. She meant my tools. Marjorie's knickknacks. The shelf Daniel made me when he was 12, crooked as hell, but I'd never touched it. That evening, I took a walk down by the lake. Sat on the bench where Marjorie and I used to bring Daniel to skip stones. I stared out at the water until the sun dipped behind the trees and everything went quiet except for the frogs. I thought about the time Daniel asked me how to change a tire, his hands shaking as he held the jack. I thought about how he cried at his mother's funeral, face buried in my chest. I thought about how proud I'd been when he graduated college, and how empty that pride now felt. I thought about all I'd given. And how little he remembered. Later that week, I went to the garage. Pulled out the old photo box from the top shelf. Inside were years of memories, Daniel's first day of school, Marjorie in her garden, the three of us at the Grand Canyon. I stared at those photos for hours. And somewhere between the snapshots, I found my heartbreak. It wasn't just the barbecue. It was the way he stopped calling me Dad. The way he handed me instructions like I was an employee. The way he laughed at my hands, the same hands that once caught him when he fell off his bike. He'd made up his mind, I wasn't the man who raised him anymore. I was the man standing in the way of his future. So I stopped waiting for him to see me differently. I started seeing him differently instead. A few days after the barbecue, I walked into my own office and found Alana sitting at my desk. She jumped, startled. The drawer in front of her was half open, a stack of my papers in her hand. "Oh. Sorry," she said, too quickly. "I was just looking for a stamp." I looked at her. Looked at the open drawer, the one that held my banking statements, my insurance policy, and the deed to the house. It was mine. It was the last place Marjorie touched. The only place Daniel ever truly belonged. And now he wanted to scrub it clean of both of us. I found myself dreaming of her again. Marjorie. In those dreams, she was never angry, just sad. Like she was watching all this unfold and couldn't reach me. One night, I stood in our bedroom, our old room, and looked at the photo of her on the dresser. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I don't think he remembers you the way he should. I don't think he remembers me either. But I remembered her. I remembered what she believed in. Honesty. Respect. Home. And I knew then what I had to do. I wasn't just going to protect the house. I was going to protect her memory. Even if that meant cutting my own son out of it entirely." Speech balloon. Have you ever felt betrayed by your own family? Let us know in the comments. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't come all at once. It's not a lightning strike. It's slow. Creeping. Like rot in the walls, invisible at first, until the house you built starts to smell wrong, sound wrong, feel wrong. That morning, I'd had enough. Daniel was sitting at the kitchen counter, scrolling on his phone. Alana was behind him, talking to someone on speakerphone, the contractor, I realized. They were discussing paint colors. If we go with the soft white, it'll make the living room feel more modern, she said. The kitchen too, Daniel added. We're thinking of knocking out that back wall eventually. There it was again. I stood in the doorway, quiet but steady. Planning renovations? I asked. They both looked up. Alana froze. Daniel smiled, thin and practiced. Just ideas, Dad. Nothing serious. Interesting, I said. Since I don't remember asking for any changes to my house. Daniel stood, pushing the bar stool back. Come on, don't be like that. We're just trying to make this place more livable, more valuable. You'd benefit from that too. How so? I asked. He blinked, thrown for a moment. Well, if we ever do sell, the profit. I'm not selling. He sighed, rubbed his eyes like I was the problem in the room. I get it. Change is hard, he said. But maybe it's time you let someone else help make decisions. I stepped into the room. My hands were shaking slightly, but I didn't hide them. I'm not helpless, I said. And I'm not stupid. Daniel leaned against the counter, arms crossed. No one said you were. But we can't just pretend things aren't changing. You're forgetting things, Dad. You can't even hold your coffee some days. I can hold a pen, I said, quieter now. He opened his mouth, then closed it. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said. Just a reminder. That night, I called George. George and I had worked together 30 years ago building decks and sheds. We weren't close now, not really, but he was sharp, observant. One of the few people who still looked me in the eye like I mattered. I told him I had a favor to ask. The next day, we sat on his porch with 2 warm beers, and I laid it all out, everything I'd heard, what I'd seen, what I was planning to do. He didn't interrupt. Just listened. When I finished, he nodded slowly and said, I figured something was off. Daniel's been asking a lot of questions around town. Tax records. Title transfers. Asked me how to get a quitclaim deed without a lawyer. That chilled me. He'd really been preparing. Quietly, confidently, like I'd already signed my life over. George shook his head. I hate to say it, but your boy's acting like you're gone already. Gone. That word rang in my ears long after I'd left George's place. When I got home, Daniel and Alana weren't there. I went straight to my office, opened the bottom drawer of my desk, and pulled out the folder I'd started. I'd labeled it in case they pushed me too far. Inside were copies of the deed, insurance, utility bills, my living will, and every note I'd kept about their behavior, dated, time-stamped, detailed. I wasn't a fool. I knew courts didn't run on feelings. They ran on facts. I looked at the pages I'd written by hand. The ink was sometimes shaky, sometimes smudged, but every word was mine. That same week, I made an appointment with Marla. She was a lawyer, not just a professional, but a friend of Marjorie's. They used to volunteer together at the food bank. Marla had visited the house many times over the years, especially after Marjorie passed. I trusted her. When I arrived at her office, she looked surprised to see me. I've been expecting this, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Daniel called me 2 weeks ago, she continued. Asked about future power of attorney stuff. Said you might need help managing finances soon. I let that sink in. He told you that? She nodded. I told him I wouldn't discuss anything unless you were present and consenting. Thank you, I said. Then I handed her the folder. She read through everything carefully. Page by page. Her brow furrowed deeper the further she read. When she looked up, her voice was gentle, but firm. You have every right to protect yourself. And you're not paranoid, you're being smart. We discussed my options. The will. The house. How to make sure they couldn't twist anything later. Then I made the decision. I want him out of the will, I said. She paused. Are you sure? I was never more sure of anything, I said. And I want a clause added, if he or Alana contests it, everything goes to charity. Marla nodded. I'll draft it tonight. We'll have it notarized tomorrow. As I held the pen to sign the initial paperwork, my hand trembled. Marla looked at me, concerned. You okay? I met her eyes. These hands may not be steady anymore, but they still know what matters. And I signed. The pen felt heavier than it used to. It wasn't just the tremor, though that was there, a faint shake in my wrist, like a quiet drumbeat reminding me of time passing. No, the weight came from something deeper. Every stroke of ink carried a lifetime of decisions, sacrifices, and memories. And now, it carried finality. Marla sat across from me, papers neatly stacked, her glasses perched on the edge of her nose. I've written it exactly as you requested, she said. You're leaving the house and all assets to the Veterans Housing Initiative. The clause about contesting it is here, anyone who challenges this will forfeit all rights. Everything would then go to the local shelter. I nodded. Good. She slid the document across the table. This is the moment, then. I took a breath. Looked at the paper. The lines of text seemed to blur for a moment. I thought about the last time I'd written Daniel's name, on his college application, on the lease I co-signed for his first apartment, on the birthday cards with checks tucked inside. His name used to bring me pride. Now it only brought silence. I signed. Marla witnessed it, then passed it to the notary who confirmed everything, sealed it, stamped it. And just like that, it was done. I had cut my son out of my legacy. We sat there quietly for a moment. Marla finally said, I'm sorry it came to this. I'm not, I replied, surprised by how steady I sounded. I used to think love meant giving someone everything you had, even if they didn't deserve it. Now I think love means honoring what's good, even if that means walking away from what's broken. She gave a small, sad smile. You want me to hold on to a copy? Please, I said. And another one for the safe deposit box. I'll keep one in the house too, somewhere they won't find it. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the photo of Marjorie hanging above the fireplace. I did it, I told her. He doesn't get to erase you. Or what we built. The house felt quiet, but not empty. I poured myself a cup of tea. My hands shook slightly as I lifted it, a tremble that had once been a source of shame, now a symbol of choice. The hands they mocked were the same hands that just secured a future free from their greed. That night, Daniel came home from somewhere, I didn't ask, didn't care. He walked past me in the hallway, earbuds in, barely acknowledging me. Hey, I said. We need to talk soon. He paused, pulled one earbud out. What about? Your future, I said. He laughed. All right, Dad. Tomorrow maybe. I'm tired. But tomorrow didn't come. The next morning, I went into my office and placed the newly signed will into a sealed envelope. I slid it into a box marked garden tools in the garage. Then I started making a list, people I trusted, people who might need to know one day. George. Marla. A neighbor or two. Later that week, I called the Veterans Housing Initiative myself. Asked for a meeting with their director. Explained I wasn't just donating, I wanted my home to become something more. A place for others to rest. To rebuild. A place worth remembering. They were stunned at first. Grateful. Told me it would change lives. Good, I thought. Because it was no longer about punishing Daniel. Not really. It was about giving the life Marjorie and I built to people who would treat it with care, not flip it like a cheap property listing. Still, the pain lingered. I'd stare at Daniel sometimes when he wasn't looking, see traces of the boy I raised. The way he ran his hand through his hair when he was frustrated. The little bounce in his step when he was excited. But it was all surface now. No roots. He didn't ask where I went that day. Didn't ask what I signed. He didn't notice the lock I added to the garage. Or the new file cabinet in my bedroom. He didn't care. And so, slowly, I stopped caring too. I kept my routines. Tea in the morning. Long walks by the lake. Letters to Marjorie that I wrote but never sent. And one more thing, I started drafting a letter to Daniel. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. I wrote. You once held my hand with such trust, it brought tears to my eyes. Now you mock the hands that raised you. I wanted you to carry this home forward. I wanted you to remember your mother's laugh, the sound of your footsteps down the hallway, the smell of her garden. But you see these walls as a bank account. You've made your choice. And now, so have I. I sealed it. Placed it next to the will. Someday, he'd read it. And whether he hated me or finally understood, that would be his to carry. Not mine. The final straw didn't come with shouting. No slammed doors. No fireworks. It came quietly, wrapped in paperwork and indifference. It was a Thursday morning, just before 8. I was watering Marjorie's rose bushes out front when a silver SUV pulled into the driveway. A woman stepped out in heels, clipboard in hand, followed by a man in a fitted blazer. I didn't recognize either of them. Can I help you? I asked, wiping my hands on my jeans. The woman smiled, professional and brisk. Hi there. We're with Larkin and Moore Real Estate. We have an appointment to tour the property. I blinked. Tour the property? She nodded. Daniel said you'd be expecting us. I said nothing. Just stared at her, the hose still running at my feet, soaking into the soil. She glanced at her watch. If this is a bad time. It's not, I said, shutting off the water. Go right ahead. They moved past me without hesitation, stepping over the threshold of my home like it already belonged to someone else. I followed them inside, silent, watching them point at walls, mutter things about square footage and natural light potential. The man took notes. Do you know if the roof's been updated recently? He asked. It was patched 2 years ago, I said. Good bones, he murmured. This place could go fast if we stage it right. I stood still in the hallway, watching them peek into bedrooms, open closets, inspect cabinets. Not one of them asked if I needed anything. Not one asked permission. When they finally left, I sat down in the living room, in the exact spot where Marjorie used to knit by the window. My hands were shaking more than usual, but this time, it wasn't age. It was rage, cold, steady rage. Daniel came home that evening like nothing happened. Hey, I've got something to run by you, he said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. Just think about it, all right? He sat across from me at the kitchen table, beer sweating onto the wood. No apology. No explanation. So, he started, I spoke with an agent. She thinks we could list within 2 weeks. We'd get a staging company in here, just for showings, nothing permanent. He sipped his beer. I said nothing. I know it seems sudden, but this is a good move, Dad. You'd get a nice little condo out of it. Something easier. No maintenance, no stairs. Plus, we could use the equity to. To what? I asked, finally. He blinked. What? You said, we could use the equity. You mean I could use it, or you? He paused. Well, both, I guess. I mean, once you're settled, there's no reason that money should just sit there. There it was. No shame. No hesitation. Just entitlement, like I was a piece of furniture he was waiting to donate. I've already made arrangements, I said. He laughed, confused. Arrangements? Yes. About the house. My future. My will. He sat up straighter. Dad. You've made a lot of decisions without me. So I made a few without you. Jesus, Dad, he said, shaking his head. Are we really doing this? Do you even know how bad your memory's been lately? You can't handle everything anymore. That's not me being cruel. That's just reality. No, son, I said quietly. Reality is what I watched walk through that front door today, two strangers in heels and suits, measuring my life in square feet and asking about renovations. Daniel stood up now, the charm gone. We're trying to help you. You're being irrational. Irrational? I stood too, slower, steadier than he expected. You brought people into this home without asking. You joked about putting me in a home. You let her snoop through my papers. You mocked my hands in front of your friends. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You want to know the truth, Daniel? I've already changed the will. You're not in it anymore. The color drained from his face. You're lying, he said. No, I replied. I'm not. And if you or Alana contest it, the entire estate goes to charity. Not a cent to you. His mouth hung open. I saw something flicker in his eyes, not sadness, not even guilt. Just panic. Like a man watching a rope slip through his fingers. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. No, I said. I made the mistake of thinking love would be enough to protect me from greed. He turned and walked out of the room. No apology. No, I'm sorry. Just silence. That night, I packed a small bag. My will, the letter to Daniel, the original deed to the house, all tucked safely inside. I didn't know exactly when or how the final confrontation would happen. But I knew it was coming. And I would be ready. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom and looked around one last time. This house wasn't just mine. It was Marjorie's. And soon, it would belong to people who needed it. Who would respect it. Who would build lives within its walls, not try to flip it for a profit. I smiled, just a little, and whispered into the quiet, he's not going to win, Marjorie. Not this time. The invitation came in a cream-colored envelope I found sitting on the kitchen table. Daniel and Alana were hosting an engagement party. At the house. My house. Or so they thought. I stared at the card for a long time. No mention of me helping to host. No conversation. Just an assumption. Like they'd already rewritten the story of this place and written me out of it. The party was set for Saturday evening. Alana's family would be flying in. Daniel's old college friends. Even some neighbors I hadn't seen in months. They were planning to show off the house, modern lighting, new curtains, a few pieces of rented furniture already brought in to make it more marketable. I watched it unfold like a man watching a stranger tear down a house he'd built with his own hands. So I made a decision. I pulled out the folder I'd kept locked away, along with the sealed letter to Daniel and the updated will. I grabbed Marla's business card, just in case. And I put on the suit Marjorie loved most, navy blue, with the faint pinstripes and slightly worn elbows. The one I wore to her funeral. The one I hadn't touched since. When I arrived at the party, I wasn't expected. People turned and stared as I stepped through the front door. Some smiled politely. Others looked away. Daniel was standing near the fireplace, drink in hand, laughing too loudly. His face dropped when he saw me. "Dad? What are you doing here?" I looked around at the guests, at the rented decorations and Alana's carefully curated flower arrangements. "I came to see what's become of my home," I said. Alana stepped in, her smile a mask. "We didn't think you'd feel up to it." I held up the envelope. "You invited me." She looked at Daniel, caught. I stepped further into the room. "I won't take much of your time," I said. "But since you've all gathered here to celebrate, I thought it was only right that I say a few words." The room went quiet. Every eye turned toward me. Daniel stepped forward. "Dad, now's not the time." "Now is exactly the time," I said, voice firm. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the letter. I unfolded it with hands that trembled, not from fear, but from years of holding too much in. "I wrote this for you, Daniel," I began. "But maybe it's time everyone heard it." I read aloud. "You once held my hand with such trust, it brought tears to my eyes. Now you mock the hands that raised you. I wanted you to carry this home forward. I wanted you to remember your mother's laugh, the smell of her garden, the sound of your own laughter down the hallway. But you see these walls as a paycheck. So I made a choice. This house will go to people who need it. You will receive nothing. And if you fight that, it all goes to charity. Because I will not let you profit off the life we built while mocking the hands that made it." There was silence. Cold, thick silence. Daniel stared at me, face flushed. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came. Then the murmurs started. Alana's mother leaned in to whisper something. Someone near the window said, "Wait, what?" A few people exchanged glances. One or two took quiet steps toward the door. I pulled out the signed, notarized copy of the will and held it up. "This is legally binding," I said. "Filed. Witnessed. Stamped. You may have mocked my hands, Daniel, but they still know how to sign." His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you already did," I said. I stepped back. I didn't need to say anything more. Let them talk. Let them whisper. Let him sit in the silence he created. I left the party the way I entered, slow, quiet, but with my head high. The door shut behind me, muffling the sound of a future he could no longer claim. When I stepped outside, the sky was turning a soft orange, the last bit of sun slipping behind the trees. I took a deep breath. It was done. Not revenge. Just justice. Brain, do you think the father made the right choice? Comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. The house was still when I came home that night. Not the echoing stillness I used to dread, the kind that followed Marjorie's funeral, or the nights Daniel left for college. This stillness was different. It was peaceful. I sat in the kitchen, made myself a cup of tea, and listened to the sound of the water heating, the quiet ticking of the old wall clock, and the distant wind brushing the windows. There was no voice calling me paranoid. No footsteps rearranging my life behind my back. Just me. And that was enough. The party had ended abruptly. George told me later that Daniel didn't say much after I left. Alana had tried to spin it, said I was confused, overly emotional. But it didn't land. The silence in that room had been too loud. Over the next few days, Daniel didn't speak to me. I didn't hear his footsteps upstairs. His car wasn't in the driveway. Eventually, I checked, the guest room was empty. Closet bare. Bathroom drawers cleared. They were gone. No note. No goodbye. Just gone. I stood in that room, the one they'd overtaken and tried to claim, and I didn't feel sad. I felt air. Like the walls had exhaled after holding their breath too long. Around town, word got out. People didn't say much to my face, but I noticed. The sideways glances at the grocery store. A couple of neighbors lingering a bit too long by the mailbox when I came out to get the paper. A few gave polite nods. One woman, Marjorie's old friend Ruth, stopped me on my walk. "I heard about the party," she said softly. I waited. She touched my arm. "Good for you." That was all. And that was enough. There were no grand confrontations after that. No apologies in the mail. Just space. Time. Stillness. I started walking more. Down by the lake, through Marjorie's old garden path. The air smelled different now, cleaner, like the soil had finally settled after being dug up. I fixed things around the house. Quiet repairs that had been put off for too long, a loose floorboard, a leaky faucet, the old door to the attic that always stuck. My hands shook, yes, but they still knew what to do. I wore gloves sometimes to steady them, but the muscle memory was still there. One morning, I pulled out Marjorie's journals. She had kept them hidden in the closet, a stack of small, fabric-covered notebooks. I hadn't opened them since the week after she passed. But that day, I did. I sat by the window in her old chair and read. So many entries were about Daniel, his first words, his fears, how he reminded her of me. But there were also passages about the future, about growing old, about dignity. One line stayed with me. "If I go before him, I hope he remembers this house isn't just ours. It's our story." I closed the journal and looked around. The house was worn, yes. The floorboards groaned. The curtains were faded. But it was full of story. Full of us. That evening, I wrote another letter. Not to Daniel. To Marjorie. "I'm sorry it came to this," I wrote. "But I think you'd be proud." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't fight with fists or bitterness. I just told the truth. And I stood my ground. You always said love without boundaries wasn't love at all. I think I finally understand. That night, someone knocked at the door. I opened it slowly. It was Sam, George's grandson. A wiry young man, maybe 25, always respectful, always soft-spoken. "Hey, Mr. Harold," he said. "George mentioned you might need a hand with the shed." I blinked, surprised. "You know how to handle a wrench?" He grinned. "I know how to learn." I let him in. We spent the next few hours sorting tools, tightening hinges, fixing a loose beam. He asked questions, I answered. I watched his hands, young, unsure, but eager. After he left, I sat on the porch, breathing in the night air. Maybe Daniel was gone. Maybe he'd never come back. Maybe that chapter was closed. But the story wasn't over. It was just beginning again. Sam came by again the next morning. This time, he brought coffee and 2 egg sandwiches wrapped in foil. "Figured you hadn't eaten yet," he said, grinning. He was right. I hadn't. We sat on the porch, chewing in silence for a while. The sky was overcast, soft light stretching across the lawn. It smelled like rain but hadn't started yet. "George said you used to build houses," Sam said eventually. "I did," I nodded. "Mostly finish work. Cabinets, floors, trim. Details that held everything together." He looked out across the yard. "This place feels like it's holding a lot together." I wasn't sure what he meant at first. But the way he said it, quiet, like he was talking about something more than just wood and walls. It stayed with me. After he left, I walked through the house slowly. Room by room. Daniel's room was empty now. But I didn't feel the pain I thought I would. Just space. Opportunity. I found myself pausing in front of the old guest room, the one Alana had tried to turn into her home office. The desk she brought in was still there, untouched. I opened the window, let in the fresh air, and sat down. That's when the idea first started to form. I remembered something the director of the Veterans Housing Initiative had said during our meeting weeks earlier: even a single room, just one, can be a lifeline for someone who has nowhere else to go. I hadn't thought about it then. But now? It made sense. Deep sense. Marjorie's voice echoed in my memory: if this house has love in it, don't let it rot in silence. Fill it again. And I knew what I had to do. The next day, I made a call to the director again. Maria, her name was. A warm, sharp woman who listened more than she spoke. I've changed my mind, I told her. I don't want to wait until I'm gone. I want to start something now. While I'm still here. She didn't hesitate. We can help. What do you have in mind? I want to open the house, I said. One room at a time. Maybe a small group at first. Veterans, or young people aging out of foster care. People who need stability. A bed. A hot meal. Something that doesn't come with strings or pity. Maria exhaled, like she'd been hoping I'd say something like that. We'll support you however we can. And they did. Within a week, we had a plan. 3 rooms cleared and prepped. Volunteers scheduled for painting and minor repairs. A local nonprofit donated twin bed frames, mattresses, linens. Another neighbor offered extra cookware and plates. George brought over a couple of folding tables and chairs. Sam was there almost every day, working without complaint. The house, for the first time in years, felt alive again. Not just busy, meaningful. I scrubbed baseboards with aching knees and trembling hands. I hammered nails with slower swings. But every creak in my joints reminded me I still could. Every drip of sweat meant I was building something again. Late one afternoon, Sam found me sitting in the hallway, staring at the plaque by the front door, the one Marjorie had made back when Daniel was still little. It read, "A good house is made of love, not walls." Sam sat beside me on the floor, his back against the wall. "I never had a house like this," he said. I nodded. "Most don't." He looked at me then, not with pity, but with something that felt like respect. "You're doing something real here. You know that, right?" "I'm just trying to make use of what's left," I said. He shook his head. "No. You're giving people something they've never had." That night, as I lay in bed, my body sore but my mind quiet, I thought about what Marjorie would say if she saw it all now: the bustle, the effort, the rooms ready to welcome people who'd been turned away elsewhere. She'd smile. Maybe cry. She always believed in second chances, not just for people, but for homes, too. The next morning, we welcomed our first guest. His name was Luis. Late 40s. Army veteran. Lost his job after an injury, then lost his apartment. He arrived with one backpack and tired eyes. I didn't give him a tour. I gave him a key. "This is yours," I told him. "No one's doing you a favor. You belong here." He shook my hand. "Thank you, sir." "Call me Harold," I said. "Or don't. Just rest." And that night, the house held a new kind of silence, not empty, but calm. Someone else breathing under this roof. Someone safe. The floorboards creaked as I walked to the kitchen to make tea, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled at the sound. Because the house was alive again. And so was I. It didn't happen all at once, the feeling of family returning to the house. It came in small pieces, like the slow warmth of sunlight after a long winter. Luis was quiet at first. Kept to himself, polite, almost apologetic for being here. But on his third night, I found him in the kitchen making 2 cups of coffee. "One for you," he said, sliding a mug across the counter. "I noticed you take it black." I nodded, surprised. We drank in silence, and it felt normal. Like 2 old friends who didn't need to fill the air with words. Then came Devon, a 21-year-old just aged out of the foster system. Thin, wary, carried himself like someone always waiting to be kicked out of the room. I showed him the guest room and told him what I told Luis: "This is yours now. You're safe here." He didn't speak much the first few days. But I'd hear music from his room, soft guitar through an old pair of headphones. On day 5, I found him sweeping the porch. "You don't have to do that," I said. "I know," he shrugged. "But I want to." A week later, he asked if he could repaint the hallway. Said it might help with the lighting. I handed him a brush. More came after that. A woman named Ellie with a quiet smile and eyes that carried too many stories. A teenage boy named Marcus who needed a place to stay until his grandmother's housing papers were approved. A pair of brothers, both veterans, who helped fix the rotted fence out back without me even asking. Every room filled. And so did the house. We didn't call it a shelter. We never used words like program or clients. We just called it the house. And somehow, without labels or plans, it became home for all of us. Every Sunday, we had dinner together. Not fancy, usually pasta or stew, whatever we had. But we always ate at the same table. I'd sit in Marjorie's old seat, and someone always sat where Daniel used to. That seat was never empty for long. We'd laugh. Share stories. Complain about the weather. It wasn't dramatic or tearful. It was simple. Real. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the house buzzed with quiet energy, music upstairs, someone cooking, someone else folding laundry, I sat on the porch and closed my eyes. This is what family was supposed to feel like. Not obligation. Not bloodlines drawn in ink and expectation. But care. Presence. Respect. Daniel never came back. I saw his car pass by once, about a month after the engagement party. He didn't stop. Just slowed near the corner, looked at the house, then drove off. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just distance. A quiet kind of goodbye. But someone else did come. Her name was Lily. About 17. Long brown hair, backpack slung over one shoulder. She knocked on the front door like she'd been building up the courage for days. "Hi," she said. "You don't know me. I'm Daniel's daughter." I stood there for a moment, trying to place her. Then it hit me, the girl he'd mentioned once, years ago, from a short relationship in his 20s. I remembered her name, barely. "I was told not to come here," she said quickly. "But I wanted to meet you. I wanted to know if it was true." "If what was true?" I asked. "That you cut him out of your will. That you gave the house to other people." I nodded slowly. "It's true." She didn't react the way I expected. No judgment. No lectures. She just looked past me into the house, where Marcus and Ellie were laughing in the kitchen over something on the radio. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Do you want to come in?" She hesitated, then nodded. I gave her a tour, not because she asked, but because something in her eyes told me she needed to see it. The garden. The kitchen. The living room where we held our Sunday dinners. When we finished, she sat at the dining table and said, "I don't know him very well. He was never really around. But I always wondered what you were like. And now I think I understand. I didn't say anything. I just watched her take it all in. Before she left, she hugged me. Not a polite hug. A real one. Tight. Warm. Like something had been passed between us, something she didn't even know she needed. "I'll come back," she said. And I believed her. That night, I lit a candle for Marjorie and set it in the window, the way she used to on holidays. Not because it was a special day. Just because it felt like she was here again. Maybe she never really left. Maybe she lived in the way people took care of each other inside these walls. In the laughter that now echoed down the hallway. In the way someone refilled the sugar bowl without being asked. The house no longer belonged to me. It belonged to all of us. And for the first time in a long time, I knew. I hadn't lost my family. I just found a new one. It was late October when he showed up again. I hadn't seen Daniel in over 5 months, not since the night of the engagement party. I'd stopped waiting, stopped wondering. The house had moved on, and so had I. But that afternoon, I heard a car door close out front, and when I looked through the lace curtain, there he was, standing by the walkway in a wrinkled button-down, holding nothing, wearing the same uncertain look he had when he was 5 and broke the kitchen window with a baseball. I opened the door but didn't step out. "Hi, Dad," he said. I waited. I was in the area, he offered, eyes flicking toward the porch, then back down to his shoes. "Figured I'd see how you were doing." I opened the screen door and stepped aside. "You want to come in?" He hesitated, then nodded once and followed me into the house. He didn't comment on the changes, the extra chairs, the new coat rack by the door, the row of mismatched shoes near the hallway. He looked around like a stranger, even though every inch of this place used to belong to him. We sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where he told me I should sell the house, the same spot where I signed him out of the will. Neither of us touched the coffee I poured. For a while, we just sat in silence. Then he finally said, "You really did it." I looked at him. "You gave it away. The house. Everything." I nodded. He laughed quietly, bitterly. "You cut your own son out. Just like that." "No," I said. "Not just like that. You spent years forgetting what this house meant. Forgetting what I meant. You laughed at me, planned behind my back, treated me like I was in the way." He rubbed his hands together. "I didn't mean for it to go like that. Things just got messy." I raised an eyebrow. "Messy? I thought you were slipping, Dad." "I really did. I thought I was protecting you." "No," I said, gently but firmly. "You were protecting your own interests. There's a difference." He didn't argue. "I came by because," he sighed. "Because Lily told me she visited. Said it felt more like home here than anywhere I've ever taken her." That caught me off guard. I hadn't expected him to bring her up. "She's right," I said. "It is home." He swallowed. I was a terrible son. I didn't respond right away. "I think," I said slowly, "you became a man your mother wouldn't recognize. And I let it happen. I thought if I gave enough money, space, time, you'd come back to who you were." His eyes were glassy now, but he blinked it away. "I didn't come to ask for anything," he said. I wanted to see it. One more time." He stood and looked around again. His hand lingered on the back of one of the kitchen chairs. Then he walked to the living room, paused at the fireplace, and touched the edge of Marjorie's old photo. He looked back at me. "I hope they take care of it," he said. "Whoever's here now." "They already are." He nodded. "I'm not angry anymore," I added. "But I'm not opening the door back up either." He didn't expect forgiveness. I could see it in his posture, shoulders slightly slumped, mouth tight. He hadn't come here to reclaim anything. Just to face it. And that was enough for me. At the door, he turned. I don't deserve it, but I hope one day you'll think of me with something other than disappointment. I stared at him for a long moment. The boy, the man, the stranger, all three of them stood in front of me. I think of you with honesty, I said. That's enough. He nodded. A single, broken nod. And then he walked away. No hugs. No parting words. Just footsteps down the path, fading into the rustle of wind through the trees. I closed the door behind him. Not gently. Not harshly. Just enough. In the living room, Marcus and Devon were playing chess. Louise was reading by the window. Ellie was in the kitchen humming to herself as she chopped vegetables for dinner. Life, uninterrupted. Real family. Speech balloon. Would you have forgiven your son? Share your thoughts in the comments. We called it Marjorie's Place. It was Sam's idea. Said the house needed a name, something to honor where it came from, and who gave it its soul. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want to make it about me. But Sam shook his head. It's not about you, he said. It's about the woman who made this house a home before any of us ever got here. And he was right. So we had a little ceremony. Nothing grand, just folding chairs on the lawn, a potluck table full of casseroles and pies, and laughter in the air. Maria from the Veterans Initiative came and gave a short speech. George said a few words too. But the part that got me, the part that made my hands tremble not from age, but from emotion, was when Lily stepped up to the front yard with a rose bush in her arms. She loved red roses, right? She asked softly. I could barely nod. She dug the hole herself. Planted the bush near the porch where Marjorie used to sit with her tea, humming songs I never learned the names of. When it was done, I knelt beside her and pressed my palm into the soil. Warm. Fresh. Alive. Just like the house. Inside, the walls had been painted soft greens and blues. Nothing fancy, just clean, light, welcoming. Each room had a bed, a small desk, a chair, and shelves stocked with whatever that person needed, clean towels, a lamp, notebooks, toothpaste. Devon taught Marcus how to cook lasagna. Louise started a small book club in the living room. Ellie crocheted blankets for the newcomers. Sam built shelves for donated shoes and coats. The sound of life moved through the house like wind through trees, gentle but constant. I wasn't running it like a business. I wasn't in charge. I was just part of it. Like a grandfather in a family that chose each other. Every Sunday, we still had dinner together. The table was longer now. Some nights we ran out of chairs and had to squeeze in, shoulder to shoulder, like old friends at a reunion. And no matter how full the house became, we always saved a seat for whoever came through the door next. The photo of Marjorie stayed above the fireplace. I'd catch people looking at it sometimes. Not out of obligation, just curiosity. "Who's that?" a new resident asked once. I smiled. "She's the reason this place exists." They always understood. Because even though they never met her, they felt her. In the kindness. In the calm. In the way this house held them without asking for anything in return. Sometimes, at night, I'd walk through the hallways after everyone had gone to bed. The doors would be closed, but I'd hear the soft sounds of sleep, breathing, the turning of pages, distant music playing through headphones. I'd pause by the rose bush on my way back in. Watch the moonlight catch the petals. And I'd talk to her. "We did it, Marjorie," I'd whisper. "They tried to erase us. But we built something they couldn't touch." The pain of Daniel's betrayal hadn't vanished. It never would. But it didn't ache the way it used to. It didn't define me anymore. He hadn't come back since that last visit. Lily had, though, more than once. She brought books, helped in the kitchen, even joined us for Sunday dinners when she could. She called me Grandpa once, by accident. She blushed. I didn't correct her. One afternoon, I found a note tucked into the front gate. No name. No signature. Just a single line, scribbled in handwriting I knew well. I was wrong. I see that now. I didn't need more. I didn't reply. Some wounds are better left closed with silence. Instead, I turned my energy toward the future. We expanded slowly, added a small garden out back, just like Marjorie's. Devon helped build raised beds, and Louise taught everyone how to grow herbs and tomatoes. We started composting. Added a small lending library in the front hall. Sam built a ramp to make the back entrance wheelchair accessible. People came and went. Some stayed a few weeks. Others stayed months. Some came back to visit. Others sent letters, photos, thanks. But no one left empty. One day, I stood at the top of the stairs and looked down at the living room below. It was full, of people, of noise, of warmth. And I realized, this was exactly what Marjorie meant when she said a home isn't where you sleep. It's where you feel safe being who you are. And after all the years, the pain, the loss, and the betrayal, that's what I'd found again. Or maybe, what I'd helped others find. My hands still trembled. My knees still ached. But I'd never felt stronger. Not because I'd won anything. But because I finally understood. Legacy isn't about bloodlines or bank accounts. It's about what you build. And who you build it for. So if you ever find yourself driving past an old house with peeling shutters and a garden full of red roses, stop for a moment. That might be Marjorie's place. And inside, you'll find people who've been through hell and came out whole, not because of me, but because of us. Because family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when the world turns cold. And here, under this roof, they will always be warm.